With Pokemon Legends ZA and the return to Kalos on the horizon, it's got me thinking again about one particular Gen 6 Pokemon. I'm talking about Hoopa, a mythical Pokemon with two forms, Hoopa Confined and Hoopa Unbound. Now, Kalos isn't the only region that has a cute, almost chibi looking mythical Pokemon. Many do. But there is something truly special about taking a cute little mythical and giving it a monstrous, awe-inspiring true form. So it got me thinking, what if other mythical Pokemon got an unbound form? In this video I'll explore just that, coming up with what I think the cuter mythical Pokemon might look like if their true untamed power were to be unlocked. I'll do this with a total of 10 different Pokemon, ranging all the way from Generation 1's Mew to Generation 9's mythical Pecharunt. My apologies to the many mythical Pokemon who will be excluded from this video. A logical place to start is with Gen 1's mythical, the iconic Mew. So this design challenge seems to be pretty simple. Just take a cute Pokemon and make it look powerful and intimidating. But in Mew's case, there is a unique challenge. Mew doesn't have an alternate form, but it does have a clone. My one goal in making a powerful unbound version of Mew is to make sure it doesn't look too much like Mewtwo, or either of Mewtwo's mega forms. To accomplish this, I decided to make the design on all fours. I also tried to make it look like some sort of ancient god, to further separate it from its futuristic clone Mewtwo. According to legend, Mew is said to be the ancestor of all Pokemon, so for its unbound form I decided to make it look like its body is constantly shifting in form and shape, like some sort of primordial ooze or cosmic cloud that can transform into any Pokemon. I also gave it two weaving tails that sort of resemble a double helix to further fit this theme. Here's the final design. Hoopa Unbound switches its type from Psychic and Ghost to Psychic and Dark. So would you leave this as just Psychic type or change its typing? Now we can move on to Gen 2, which has its own cute mythical Pokemon Celebi. Celebi isn't the ancestor of all Pokemon, but it is still quite powerful and important. Celebi is a guardian of nature. It travels through time to intervene in events that might cause harm to the environment. Mostly, I made Celebi's Unbound design to look like a larger, more powerful being, but I also incorporated a flower known as the Elder Flower into its design. Not only is this flower known for its healing properties, it being literally named the Elder Flower just seems to fit the time travel theme. Here's the final design. I think it has to be Grass and Fairy type instead of Grass and Psychic, but maybe you can help me come up with a new ability. Now we can move on to Gen 3. This generation had two mythical Pokemon, Deoxys and Jirachi. Deoxys already looks plenty powerful in appearance, and it even has several additional forms already, so it makes total sense to just focus on giving Jirachi an unbound form. Jirachi is known as the Wishmaker Pokemon, with its design and lore taking elements from shooting stars and something called Kanzaku paper, which people write wishes on during Japanese Tanabata or Star Festival. Traditionally, this festival celebrates the meeting of two deities, represented by the stars Vega and Altair, who are separated across different parts of the galaxy, only allowed to meet once a year. It might be cool if there is a second Jirachi somewhere in a different part of the galaxy. And what if this unbound form is unlocked when the two finally meet? One feature of Jirachi's design which I wanted to pay particular attention to is its third eye. This eye on Jirachi's belly is significant, so I wanted to definitely make sure I included extra eyes in the design. Here's the final design. Hopefully it still looks like it could be a Pokemon and not too much just like a DBZ character. Okay, Gen 4 had several mythical Pokemon, and I know I wasn't going to give Deoxys an unbound form because it already had additional forms, but I am going to give an unbound form to Shaymin even though it already gets a sky form. Shaymin is a little cutie. I want to turn it into a powerful beast. Shaymin is the Gratitude Pokemon, and heals nature wherever it goes. It starts out as a hedgehog, and in its sky form, turns into something resembling a dog, maybe a reindeer? I've also heard it's inspired by a little moose. Either way, it's definitely not a hedgehog, so it clearly changes animals. Naturally, its final form should continue this theme and be yet another animal. Here's the final design. Obviously, I turned it into a monster bear. I thought moose antlers fit well with the nature theme. I am skipping Darkrai and Arceus, but Gen 4 did have another cute mythical, Manaphy. I will give it an unbound design. Manaphy is known as the Prince of the Sea. Its design is likely based on something called sea angels, which are tiny sea slugs. I kept that in mind when creating this design, taking elements from other larger sea slugs, as well as mythical creatures like mermen. Here's the final design. I decided it'd be cool to give it a bioluminescent crown, since I noticed these yellow spots in Manaphy's original design. Next, we can move on to Gen 5, making a design for not 1, not 2, but 3 cute mythical Pokemon: Victini, Keldeo, and Meloetta. Sorry Genesect, you already look intimidating enough. Let's start with Victini. Victini's design is based on something called Usagi Ringo, a technique of slicing apples to resemble bunny rabbits. Also likely inspired by the Greek goddess of victory Nike, or the Roman equivalent Victoria. This is why Victini is given little wings you see on its legs. Decided to highlight the wing aspect and came up with this final design. Victini is said to have infinite energy, and has a very cool signature move. I was thinking maybe it could get a second set of flaming V-shaped wings when using it. Now we can move on to making a design for Meloetta, the music Pokemon. This took several attempts. The previous designs mostly involved me just thinking of a powerful final form for each Pokemon. But in this case, Meloetta mostly just appears to be a normal chibi human in both of its forms. I started making her look like Hatsune Miku, but maybe mixed with Agumon, the Digimon. This just seemed like it crossed that too human line and no longer felt like a Pokemon. Then I had an idea of making it look like a Greek muse, often associated with being the origin of music and art. I gave it several colorful stands that could represent multiple genres of music. Somehow this didn't seem different enough from the original Meloetta, appeared maybe more like a Mega Evolution than an Unbound form. I decided to solve the problem, I had to think of an animal-like inspiration for Meloetta to transform into. An obvious choice for this, of course, would be a bird, as they're most commonly associated with music. Here's the final design. I still incorporated much of Meloetta's chibi look into this form, but I think it does the trick. Next is Keldeo. Again, Keldeo does already have an additional form called the Resolute form, though this form is mostly just a visual change, and he changes even less in appearance than Shaymin's Sky form. I did notice, however, that in this form, it gets 3 strands of color: blue, green, and orange, that I feel have to represent the colors of the other Swords of Justice. I decided to roll with this and include that aspect into its Unbound design. I turned him into more of an alicorn, a winged unicorn, and added large swords of each color onto his wings and chest. I even think it could have a cool new signature move that uses all 4 swords at once like this. Here's the final design. Certainly this isn't as monstrous looking as Hoopa Unbound, but I feel like the goal is really to represent each Pokemon's character. So Keldeo Unbound should be more heroic looking. After Gen 5 comes Gen 6. Now, I said at the beginning I was only going to design 10 Pokemon, but I will throw in 1 bonus Pokemon here. In addition to Hoopa, Gen 6 has the mythical Pokemon Diancie. I didn't originally plan on making an Unbound form for this Pokemon, but I've seen a lot of chatter online about these statues in Pokemon X and Y. In my opinion, they're purely decorative and not going to make a comeback in any meaningful way in Pokemon Legends EA. They may end up representing a human character we see in Legends EA, but some are already speculating that this will be a surprise Pokemon in the upcoming game. Just to take a stab at it, what if this is a new form of Diancie? I did what I could and threw this together. I'm not really a fan, but there wasn't much I could work with here. Obviously Diancie gets a Mega Evolution, so I really wasn't planning on doing this. Gen 6 also had Volcanion. It looks powerful enough. Do I really have to mention every mythical I'm skipping? We can move on to Gen 7, which has its own cute mythical Pokemon, Marshadow. Apologies, of course, to the ones I left out. Maybe I'll give you new forms later. Marshadow is inspired by and likely gets its name from the Night Marchers, ghosts of ancient fallen warriors. This is why it gets the very cool type combo of Ghost and Fighting type, so I kept that in mind when working on its Unbound design. Marshadow does change appearance when it's angered or attacking. Its fighting spirit begins to burn up, and it turns into Zenith Marshadow, where it gets these cool glowing flames. I decided to play up that aspect in this final design. I feel like Marshadow has always been a really underrated mythical. Not sure why he doesn't get that much attention. Anyway, after Gen 7 comes Gen 8. And sorry everyone, but I am skipping this generation. Its mythical Pokemon is Zarude. Not exactly a cute little chibi Pokemon. There is Calyrex and Kubfu. They're considered legendaries, and besides, Kubfu already evolves. Instead, we can move on to the final design in this video, the newest mythical Pokemon, Pecharunt. You already know this by now, but Pecharunt is of course based on the Japanese folktale of Momotaro. Momotaro is said to be a boy that was born from a peach, and teamed up with a pheasant and a monkey and a dog to defeat an evil ogre. With Pecharunt, they sort of flipped this story on its head. Instead of it being a heroic figure, Pecharunt and the Loyal Three are villains. Oh, sorry for the spoiler. You probably already knew that. They still included the peach theme in Pecharunt's design, making its protective shell look like a Pecha berry. For its Unbound design, I decided to keep the villain theme, of course, but made it grow up to be less of a peach pit and more of an actual kid. I know I said I didn't want Pokemon to look too humanoid, though I probably failed at that with several of the designs already, but I think in this case I was able to navigate that without making it look too much like any human characters in the games. Here's the final design. In this case, I actually could definitely see it losing its ghost type and being poison and dark instead. But let me know what you think. That's a wrap. I can't wait to see what Legend ZA reveals, and I wonder what the mythical Pokemon in the 10th generation games will bring. Hope you enjoyed it. As always, be sure to like and subscribe.